Welcome to another episode of Equity Mates, a podcast where we explore what's possible in the world of investing. If you've just joined us for the very first time, a huge welcome to our community. My name is Bryce, and as always, I'm joined by my equity buddy, Ren. How are you going?
I'm very good, Bryce. Very excited for this episode. There is a lot happening in the world.
Always.
And sometimes I appreciate that in our quiet little corner, we don't have to talk about some of the wild stuff that's happening.
Yeah, it is a bit overwhelming at times, isn't it?
I guess this is a sanctuary away from some of the, sadder news stories that are happening. There's plenty of more intelligent and more thoughtful people that can unpack things happening in the Middle East.
Absolutely.
In the US and the like.
Yes. Today we're going to unpack some of the most important business headlines from around the world. We're going to look at one of the rare earths that is particularly important to China and close out with a community question comparing two of the all-growth ETFs, one from BetaShares and one from Vanguard. So Ren, let's get stuck in.
News and markets.
The headlines we're covering today: Meta's new revenue stream is WhatsApp. Santos has had a monster offer. The UK is doubling down on nuclear. And what the? Trump's organization has a new product.
Yeah, well, let's start with Meta's latest revenue stream. They bought Instagram for $1 billion.
Yeah.
Good acquisition.
Great acquisition.
They bought WhatsApp for about $20 billion.
Oh.
Haven't made a lot of money from WhatsApp. Got a lot of users on WhatsApp, but haven't made a lot of money.
No.
But that may be about to change because WhatsApp is about to start showing ads.
They are. Now, if you're sitting there thinking, oh no, I'm going to have ads appear all throughout my group chats with my mates, have no fear, because the advertisements at this stage are going to be shown in the app's updates tab. A confession from me, Ren, part of the app that I never go on.
Yeah, well, apparently it's used by 1.5 billion people each day.
Wow.
Not WhatsApp, the updates,
the updates tab. Wow. Well, I'm not one of them. So they're not going to appear, as we said, in personal chats at this stage.
Which is good news because some of the ads you would be getting in your group chats. Oh,
you're in all my group chats.
The things that you say in there. So last year, Meta did about $165 billion in revenue. $160 billion of that is ad revenue. This is an advertising business that rebranded itself to try and sell hardware.
Yeah.
But it's an advertising business.
Yeah.
As Google potentially gets eroded by AI, there's a duopoly in digital advertising. I've been thinking a lot about how it may become a monopoly in digital advertising.
Meta?
Well, yeah, Meta just might be a big winner from Google's loss.
Potentially,
because all the thing that I'm trying to get my head around, this is a complete tangent, but all the ad revenue that goes to Google search will need to go somewhere, or it will stay with Google search even if there's less search volume. It's not going back to billboards.
No, it's just going to go to AI platforms though.
But none of them have advertising offerings yet. I know.
Yeah.
But it's also like, I don't want ChatGPT advertising edition. I will trust the results less. And I know that they don't care what I want, but
they don't.
I don't know.
You might have a paid feature and a non-paid feature.
Maybe.
Yeah. And it's like non-paid. You're going to search for 10 recipes for dinner and it's all going to be sponsored.
Then you're going to get Coles
that's
owns
Google.
Taste.com.
You've been putting up with that for years.
But this is the chance.
This is just a better...
No. It's actually not, because Google gives you multiple options. So advertising is just the top of multiple options. The difference with AI is it gives you one answer.
Perplexity doesn't. There's heaps of models that give you, I can see a world where it's here's the answer, plus here's 5 other vacuums that you're looking for.
Oh,
give me the give me the best rated dryers or whatever.
But no advertiser is going to want to be, give me the best dryer in Australia. Here's the answer. Here are other models. How much are you paying to be under the one answer?
To your point though, if that's where the users are though, you're paying for it.
Yeah, that's fair.
Yeah, it is an interesting thought process because you're right. There's going to be a lot of money sloshing around.
Yeah. Trying to find a new home.
Yeah.
Or this whole thing is overblown and Google will continue to be dominant. That's
potentially, yeah. But I saw some pretty interesting stats the other day about they've lost 7% market share already.
Yeah, I've actually really noticed it in my own habits because I was a holdout on Google and I kind of thought that people were overstating how much they were moving to AI because they noticed when they were moving, but they didn't notice when they just continued to Google day to day.
Yeah.
But I have actually noticed a number of instances where Yeah, I am moving.
Yeah, it's crazy. I think.
It's like you can give it a more complex question and get an answer.
Yeah.
Whereas, with Google search, you can't.
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay,
One to
anyway,
watch,
Meta.
one to watch, yeah.
So a couple of other updates for WhatsApp that we think are interesting because Meta is trying to really monetize this asset. Channels, do you use channels at all?
We are in one channel, yeah. You and I.
Oh, we are, yes. Yeah. So that's where like a business or a creator or someone can basically have a channel and provide updates to their subscribers. They can now have a paid tier on their channels. So paid subscribers can get exclusive updates. And Meta will take a cut of that. And then also business owners will be able to pay to promote their channel's visibility to new users. Equity Mates doesn't have a channel, but maybe that's something we look into.
I feel like every time we've spoken about it, you've been like, that would be so frustrating.
Having a channel.
Yeah. As long as it's like a one-way channel.
Oh, I think these are one ways.
Oh,
I don't
are
think it's
they?
like a group chat. I think it's like a broadcast.
Because like one we're in with the DPA, for example, that's a channel. A channel is where it's like a collection.
Yeah.
you know what I
I
mean?
think you can make them broadcast.
Yeah,
only.
nice. That would be good. Yeah, well, let us know if you want a channel.
Okay. Well, anyway, I think we've spoken about Meta long enough. All right, well, the second story of the day, let's move away from AI. This is probably as far as you can get. Let's talk oil and gas.
Nice.
Australia has two major oil and gas companies, Woodside and Santos. Santos is the smaller of the two. It just received the largest all-cash takeover offer in the history of the global energy market.
It's wild. So to put some numbers to it, they received a $36 billion takeover offer from XRG. This is a company that is backed by the Abu Dhabi National Oil Company and US private equity giant Carlyle. Huge offer.
Yeah.
Huge offer. The question is, Ren, will it actually go through?
Well, just to close out on the offer, it was at a 28% premium to Santos's closing share price, so a big premium.
Yeah.
And the history with Santos is they've kind of been shopping themselves around for a while. But you asked the important question, will it go through? Because there are so many stakeholders that Santos needs sign off from. For starters, the South Australian government, it's rare that a state government can block a merger like this, but a number of their licenses, like their petroleum licenses, exploration licenses, have like change of control provisions in them. So the South Australian government does have some power here, and they've come out and said, if it's not in the interest of South Australians, we'll block it. For context, Santos is South Australia's largest company, and much like Qantas, Santos stands for South Australian Northern Territory Oil Search. I think it's Oil Search, but anyway, it's an acronym like Qantas.
I did not know that.
There you go.
I mean, I'm not surprised that these state governments have that sort of a clause given the employment and I guess the impact that it actually has on the state.
Yeah, I mean, they don't have it because of the employment. They have it because they've given them exploration licenses.
True, but
It's not like they could
political
block.
move.
It's not like they could block Woolworths.
No.
You know, it's because of the industry they're in.
Yeah.
But similarly, this move will have to get through the ACCC. It'll have to get through the Foreign Investment Review Board. Because they've got a number of exploration licenses in PNG as well, it'll also have to get through PNG regulators. There's some important historical context here. So in 2001, Shell, the British oil major, tried to buy Woodside. And the treasurer at the time, Peter Costello, the liberal free marketeer, Peter Costello, blocked it. Why did he block it? Because he said it wasn't in Australia's national interest for a foreign company to own one of Australia's major oil companies. And in particular, he thought that Shell might make different investment decisions. Woodside was developing the Northwest Shelf at that point, and he was like, well, Shell might decide not to invest there and instead invest in, like a European oil field or whatever. So Costello blocked it. Given that Australia, the industry is consolidated more and that we only, like BHP got out of oil and gas and the like, and we've now really got Santos and Woodside, I wouldn't be surprised if Treasurer Jim Chalmers thinks along similar lines to his predecessor.
Big time. Well, certainly one to watch, a whopping deal. These things take absolutely ages to play out. All right, over to the UK, where the UK government is doubling down on nuclear, announcing a £14 billion investment into a new nuclear plant in Suffolk. The impact here in Australia is, of course, the uranium miners all had a great day.
Deep Yellow was up 21%, Paladin up 16%, Boss Energy up 18%. There was also an announcement by the Sprott Uranium Physical Trust, which is like the largest fund that holds physical uranium for investors. They were raising an extra $100 million to buy more uranium because of demand. We are just seeing a strong and consistent trend that nuclear power is being embraced more and more, particularly in the context of AI.
Yeah.
And whilst we're not sitting here saying that the Australian government should invest in nuclear, it does feel like our ban on anyone investing in nuclear energy is maybe a little bit out of sync of where the world is going.
Yeah.
Big tech is throwing tens of billions of dollars investing in nuclear energy. Maybe we should be trying to get on the end of that spigot of money.
Well, we spoke about DPL, all three of those companies, I can't remember, within the last sort of 8 weeks or so. Deep Yellow since early April is actually up 100%.
Yeah. They've had a really good run.
News, yeah.
So the energy security question is active in Australia at the moment. We had the three major hyperscalers, Amazon, Google, and Microsoft, write a letter to the Australian government through some like lobbying agency they're a part of, basically saying you guys need to think about energy storage and invest seriously in batteries, because I think they're getting worried about energy security for their data centers in Australia. So nuclear, more battery storage, whatever it is, this issue is only going to get more and more prominent as the power-hungry data centers take up more and more of our energy supply.
A lot of debate to be had here in Australia, that is for sure.
All right, well, let's close it out with our What The. This is a segment we include in our daily newsletter where we find a surprising story that's caught our attention from the business world and has us asking, what the? And Bryce, I've got one for you.
Okay.
The Trump organization has been known to to release a number of different products. I had a look at their website earlier. They've sold everything from Bibles to pickleball rackets.
Yeah.
All types of apparel. There's the MAGA Mums Club for the mums in your life. Mother's Day gift right there. We had Trump watches. But this week, we got the latest product offering from the Trump organization.
Yeah.
I don't know if you've seen it.
I think I have.
Okay. I was going to get you to guess. What
I'll
is it?
still guess, but is it Trump Mobiles?
It is Trump Mobiles.
Yeah.
The announcement is that the Trump organization will be selling Trump Mobiles. They will be 499 gold-plated phones made in America.
Yeah.
Now, they haven't announced which company will be making phones for $500 in America. I'm skeptical about that. But gold-plated phones made in America. And what's more, they'll also be offering Trump mobile plans. It'll be like, like a Boost Mobile or something where they're piggybacking off the main carriers. The monthly price of the mobile plan, $47.45 a month.
His presidential
numbers. So
it's just staggering to me. And I get that of everyone that voted in America, not entire population, but of everyone that voted, there was a majority that voted for Trump.
Yes.
But it's just staggering that there's such a demand for his brand that they can continue to do stuff like this.
Yes,
it's like, is his brand that appealing to people that he knows he has an large enough addressable market? Well, I guess it's only 499 phones. Like, it's not like
$499 phones.
Oh, $499 phones. Yeah. I can't get my head around that. People love his brand.
All right, clip this. 3 years from now, Bryce will have a Trump phone.
No way. No way. There's a lot of chat about the importance of rare earths, but what do we actually mean when it comes to rare earths? And Ren, today, we're going to unpack it with one that is particularly important to military hardware.
Yeah, so I went down a bit of a rabbit hole on this, and I wanted to sort of bring it to the table because obviously rare earths have been in the conversation a lot in the context of the trade war. So China controls 70% of the world's rare earth mining and 90% of the world's rare earth processing. So they are basically a monopoly on these elements, these minerals. We've seen with the US-China trade war that it has become a real pressure point for America and arguably dragged America back to the table because China cut off the world's supply, well, America's supply. So I wanted to understand it better, and in particular, Australia has the only listed rare earths miner that has a completely non-Chinese supply chain. And so this is Lynas Rare Earths. The ticker is LYC. And they've like explicitly set themselves up to not be exposed to China. So they become a really interesting play geopolitically, but also from an investment point of view. They trade at like 160 times PE.
Yeah.
So, I mean, it's not a new thought from me, but I just wanted to understand them better and understand the issue better. So what do we actually mean by rare earths? And I think the starting point is that rare earths is a complete misnomer because they're not rare at all. They're in fact incredibly ubiquitous. They're a group of 17 soft, heavy metals. They're ubiquitous throughout the world, but they're often in trace amounts. So that means you need like...
That's the rare element.
Yeah. So
rare among a large portion of other shit.
rare amongst dirt.
Yeah.
And so what you've got to do is process huge amounts of ore and huge amounts of dirt at great expense and great environmental expense. And do you watch or listen to, if you're listening, the ABC podcast?
Yeah.
Matt Bevan did a really good deep dive on the actual processing of rare earths.
Yeah.
I would highly recommend going and checking it out. He actually processed some himself.
What, in his house?
Yeah. But it just talks about like the massive environmental destruction that comes to process them. Just the amount of water you need to use, the amount of sludge, but like the sludge that you're creating, and then in China at least, you're pumping back into rivers.
Yeah.
But they are hugely important. They're needed to make magnets, glass, lasers, electronics components. So they have a number of industrial applications, military applications, and that leads to one that I think sort of we can use to exemplify this whole issue, and that's samarium.
Nice. Not one that, to be honest, comes to mind when you say rare earths.
Had you heard of it before?
Recency bias with what's been going on.
I hadn't heard of it.
Not prior to the whole trade war stuff.
Yeah. But I think it's a good symbol of just like how much power China has in this market. So samarium is used in magnets that can withstand temperatures hot enough to melt lead, and they can withstand those temperatures without losing their magnetic forces.
Wow.
So you can make magnets out of other rare earths. Let me get this right. Dysprosium and terbium. And so those are used to make magnets for like electric vehicles. But samarium you need for military applications.
Yeah.
Things like missiles, fighter jets, they can't use those other rare earths. They need samarium. To the point where the main buyer of samarium in America is Lockheed Martin.
Yep.
Who use about 22.5 kilos of samarium magnets in each F-35 fighter jet. But here's the problem. China produces the entire world's supply of samarium. There is no alternative source at the moment.
Wow.
And so Trump's Liberation Day was the 2nd of April.
Yeah.
And then on the 4th of April, so 2 days later, China halted exports of 7 kinds of rare earths, as well as the magnets made from them, including samarium.
Well played.
And so that has just absolutely put the US like military
on the back foot.
On the back foot, yeah. Here's like the complexity of it all. There's all these rules in the US that any components made in military applications need to be made in the US to protect their supply chains. But there's no rules about where the components of those. So often samarium gets sold to like chemical companies mixed with cobalt and other metals, and then that's done in the US, and so that satisfies the rules. But they're getting their samarium from China.
Wow.
And so there's just been so much pressure on the US, and that's part of the reason why these London talks happened. Now, the US has been aware of these concerns for years. There was a company, I can't remember its name, but it tried to restart a samarium processing plant. But then the US Department of Defense awarded Lynas, the Australian company, a $351 million contract to build a facility in Texas that would produce samarium.
Did it work?
But here's the problem. Well, it's not up yet. Apparently, it's still in process. But it's faced cost overruns, but more importantly, regulatory hurdles because of the environmental damage, and also supply chain challenges because they couldn't do everything in America. They would actually need to process the ore in America and then re-export it for further processing before bringing it back to America.
What?
And as I was going down this rabbit hole, it just exemplified to me how much of a bind America is in at the moment.
Yeah.
Yeah.
They are cooked.
Yeah.
What does China have over everyone else? Like,
In terms of why do they do it?
I understand that the supply, like I'm guessing most of the Samarium supply is also in in China.
No, well, I think that like that's the starting point. Like these aren't rare in the sense that like there's no Samarium anywhere.
So when you say 70% of mining, it's just that they do 70% of mining.
Yeah, well, I mean, to answer your question directly, what does China have over everyone else? Lacks environmental
Yeah,
regulations.
just they don't give a shit.
Well, they prioritize things differently.
Okay. That was where I was going. Yeah, so they just have less red tape.
that
stuff.
Well, yeah, not even that. It's like the government this would have become a
Strategic,
priority for them to like own the.
But I mean, surely US is looking at this now, being like, we need to get this thing up and running.
Well, I mean, they have, and so like the Linus example is a classic example of like there was impetus to be like, this is a problem, we need to fix it, but then it runs into like local environmental regulation and the like.
Yeah.
I mean, it was similar so Linus has a processing facility in Malaysia. They also have processing in Kalgoorlie, but the facility in Malaysia faced heaps of local opposition because they were concerned about the environmental impact. Yeah.
Nice. Well, if we take a look at Linus, ticker LYC, stock is up 42% year to date. Over the last 12 months, it's up 51%. Past 5 years, 383%. But as you said, it's the only listed exposure to rare earths.
Yeah.
Pure play listed exposure.
Yeah, with no and
here in Australia.
With no here in Australia, but
Yeah.
with no exposure to China as
Yeah.
well. It does look expensive on a price to earnings basis, but it's strategically important.
Yeah.
So who knows what happens? Maybe the US Department of Defense buys it.
Maybe. Love it. Well, Samarium, who would have thought? We'll keep an eye on everything that progresses between the US and China. So make sure you subscribe to our daily newsletter. I don't know if we gave it a plug earlier, but we'll put a link in the show notes so you can keep up with all of the headlines.
Let's ask the community.
Hey, Equity
Hi, I
Mate.
just had a question.
Hey, Bryce, friend. I've got a question.
Answered.
Can one ETF be really all that you need? Vanguard and BetaShares both think so. And today we are comparing their all growth ETFs, which has come from a community question.
Yeah, this question came in from Steve.
Hi Bryce, hi Ren, this is Steve. Love your work. I've just stumbled across VDAL and I'm looking for an all-in-one ETF for my wife just to set and forget. I know Bryce loves his DHHF when you're talking about an all-in-one ETF, but I'm just wondering how this one stacks up. Thanks, cheers, keep up the good work.
Thanks, Steve. Appreciate the question. If you have a question, hit us up at equitymates.com/contact. We'd love it if you recorded a voice note like Steve, which you can do on the website. I mean, frankly, we're more likely to answer your question on the show if it's a voice note. So
We prioritize it.
yeah.
Yeah.
Let that be the incentive.
Yeah.
But look, let's get into it. DHHF v VDAL. Now, we want to acknowledge that we've definitely spoken about these ETFs before, particularly on Get Started Investing. So if you're a listener there, you may have heard us say some of these things before, but obviously not everyone listens to both shows. So Bryce, DHHF, VDAL, two ETFs that both purport to be your all-in-one solution.
All-in-one growth solution.
Your core portfolio in a box.
Yeah.
Where do we want to start? What do you want to compare?
All right, well, let's start with their inception dates, how long they've been around. Very important.
Start with the most interesting.
Well, the reason that we're doing this is Vanguard has just started to muscle in on the competition here. The BetaShares Diversified All Growth has been around for a number of years, since 15th of December 2020. Vanguard's come to the party earlier this year in 2025. March, they released VDAL.
Yes.
So, performance-wise, DHHF has been pretty decent, 11.44% per annum over the last 5 years. We don't have enough data to give a comparison for VDAL since it hasn't even been around for 12 months.
And Bryce, while you were talking, I just quickly got the compound interest calculator out to answer the question, can one of these ETFs be enough? It has only been 5 years, but DHHF, 11.4% a year, you said?
Yep.
I quickly did $100 a month for 30 years at 11.4% a year.
Yep.
$1.12 million.
Sounds pretty good to me.
Sounds more than you will need.
Yeah.
Maybe not more than you would want, but definitely more than you would need. But extend that timeline for another 10 years, extend it to 40 years, $3.4 million.
Amazing. So I guess first tick goes in the box that yes, one ETF really can be enough. The performance is there. So tick on performance. Let's look at the fundamentals, the fees. So DHHF, beta shares, 0.19% per annum, and VDAL is 0.27% per annum. I'm surprised VDAL didn't come in and match it there, but beta shares slightly cheaper.
Yeah. So if we head to portfolio construction, both of these ETFs are 100% stocks. That's their selling point. They have slightly different portfolio construction. So for beta shares, DHHF, it's 38% Australia, 40% US, 16% developed world outside of the US, and then 6% emerging markets.
Yeah.
And they achieved that with 4 ETFs. The thing I like about beta shares is they're not just buying beta shares ETFs.
Yeah.
They've got a Vanguard ETF, beta shares, and then 2 from State Street to get that exposure. So that's beta shares. How does that compare to Vanguard?
Again, 100% equities, as you said. 40% allocated to Australia. 47% is across global stocks. The breakdown, 29% is unhedged and 18% is hedged. So there's some currency risk there. 6% is to emerging markets and 7% is small caps. This again is all done through underlying ETFs. In this instance, 5 underlying ETFs, all Vanguard ETFs. I was interested in what they did for the small caps, and looking at it is they just give you the small cap index.
To be clear, it's 5 ETFs and 4 funds. So it's 9 underlying holdings in total, all Vanguard. But a lot of them overlap. It's like the Vanguard Australian Shares Index ETF and then the Vanguard Australian Shares Index Fund.
And same with small caps. They've got the Vanguard International Small Companies Index and then the Vanguard International Small Companies Index. Fund.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So there must be a reason for that, but they're obviously just overlapping. Like they're the same products. One's a listed version, one's an unlisted version. So to draw it out and to step back, I think the starting point is they're very similar.
Yeah.
So like the fees are, Vanguard is slightly more expensive, but like 0.19, 0.27, they're both, in the scheme of things, very low fee products.
Yeah.
So then if we get to portfolio construction, they're very similar. They're both about 40% Australia, 60% global stocks. The way they split that 60% up is slightly different, but really you're owning many of the same stocks in many of the same proportions. You mentioned the currency with Vanguard. So this is probably one of the key differences. Beta shares is 100% unhedged, so you have more exposure to currency fluctuations. Vanguard is like partially hedged. So they hedge some of the currency exposure, so you're less exposed to currency fluctuations, but you still are exposed in the unhedged part of the portfolio. Over the long term, I think that's not going to be a major driver of your overall returns. So I wouldn't be too worried about that if you're holding these ETFs for the long term. So Bryce, let's go back to Steve's question. He was asking which one, head-to-head, DHHF or VDAL, with the obvious disclaimer that we don't know about Steve or his wife's personal financial circumstances, their goals, their risk tolerance, or anything like that. But in a general sense, head-to-head, which side of the fence?
Ding,
which
ding,
side of the
ding.
fence are you falling?
Ding, ding, ding. Really, it comes down to the fees and the performance here. So fees, beta shares comes out on top. But we know the underlying portfolio constructions are slightly different, and what impact does that have on returns? So comparing from when VDAL launched in March,
Acknowledging that that's pretty short.
very short, it has outperformed DHHF by about 1.5%.
Okay, 4.1% for VDAL, 2.7% for
DHHF. Yeah. Now, again, too early to tell if this trend will continue, but performance is important. So I'm going to be really annoying and reserve my judgment until we do this in a year's time to actually see the difference in the portfolio construction. But I would say to Steve, both options for a all-in-one, I would be happy with.
Yeah, I think there's no bad options here. I think you're touching on the thing that probably becomes the biggest difference over time, which is if these portfolio construction, like these target percentages remain, beta shares will be about 40% US because that's explicitly their target. 47% global stocks for Vanguard. About 70% of the global stock market index is US. So that means that right now it's about 33% US. So it depends if you want more global stocks, then you'd probably look at Vanguard. If you want more US, you'd
yeah.
look at beta shares. That's probably going to be the biggest driver of returns over time.
Love it.
Unless like the 7% small caps from Vanguard, but
Either or, you're going to be retiring happy if you put $100 a month into those over the next 40 years. So rest assured, you can have one ETF for the rest of your life.
yeah.
For those watching on YouTube, don't stress, just invest. 4 steps to help you build a portfolio that will set you up for the rest of your life that you can pretty much never look at again and retire very, very happy. Don't stress, just invest. We'll put a link in the show notes. Now, before we go, we just want to say thank you to Steve for submitting the question. A reminder, if you want to submit, head to equitymates.com/contact. But Ren, as always, great to chat stocks. We'll pick it up next week.
Sounds good.
I will say this about investing. Everything you do learn is cumulative. What I learned at 20 is useful.